All right, let's start off with our first big story. In June 2016, the Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, called NEITI, he promised that the agency, in collaboration with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, will embark on a probe of airing oil firms in Nigeria over unremitted oil revenue to the federal government.
Now it is fulfilling that promise. It has now revealed that former President Olusegun Obasanjo and the late Umaru Yar'Adua and Goodluck Jonathan squandered more than 70 trillion naira made from sales of crude oil and gas between 1999 and 2014. NEITI, in its 2013 audit report, had stated that the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and its subsidiaries were yet to remit $3.787 billion. And 36.3 billion naira as identified in the 2013 oil and gas industry audit, and the sum of $12.9 billion which was paid by the Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas to the Federation account between 2005 and 2013.
Now, according to the agency, Nigeria has lost $6 billion to crude swap and oil theft, and 13.4 billion naira from non-compliance to 90-day credit limit by the NNPC. Now, consequently, the Senate set up an ad hoc committee chaired by Senator Jibrin Barau to probe the 1 trillion naira unremitted funds in the oil and gas industry uncovered by NEITI.
And NEITI's report showed that the sum of 33.7 billion naira was realized from the solid mineral sector in 2013. The report also showed that Nigeria made $58 billion from hydrocarbon in 2013. Very mind-boggling revelations there. Well, we have our guest here in the studio. He's an oil and gas expert, Alex Osunde. It's good to have you again. Join us this morning.
Good to see you. Thank you.
This figures. Where do we even start from? Okay, well, NEITI and EFCC might just, be taking the first step to try to unravel how much rot and how much money, the Nigerian government has lost over the years. So much has been said about the opaqueness and lack of transparency in that sector. First, what's your take on, what we're seeing?
It is serious, but let's go back to the early years of NEITI and the World EITI. Nigeria was at the forefront. It was a model nation at that time, along with Azerbaijan. Okay, so it's surprising that we've now descended to 40 on the list. Because from what the earlier report, you were saying that we are number 40 now on the transparency list. It shows that there's been lack of commitment, lack of political will, and possibly a weakening of the structures. In fact, for a long time, from about 2006, 2007, when the Obasanjo regime left and Yar'Adua came in, there's been a gradual weakening of NEITI. Obasanjo was able to legislate, or rather sign the bill in 2007, I believe, early 2007 it was, and followed later by the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which was passed under Yar'Adua. So all those reforms ebbed thereafter. Now, the first NEITI audit report only came up with maybe about $236 million, or whittled down after reconciliations to about $16 million. So when you are now talking about these bogus figures of billions, it is surprising. I must warn, though, that there's a lot of sensational headlines about this. The users of audit reports from NEITI would be the elites in the ministries, in the NNPC, in the Senate and the House of Reps. And so you would expect that when they have access to the latest report, which is about 3 years old, really, I mean, 2013,
yes.
They would study it, and try to, justify and corroborate and cross-check the figures.
All right, let's
I don't think that has happened.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go on a break and then we'll come back to dwell more on this. Stay with us as we go on a break now. We'll come back to dwell more on this topic. All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and right now we're discussing the NEITI's oil probe, if I have to put it that way, or the Senate probe of NEITI and the dealings in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. We have an oil and gas expert with us in the studio, Alex Osunde, and we are talking about this. Now, Alex, let's have an understanding. In the oil industry, there seem to be, when it comes to Nigerians on the outside, in fact, even Senate, we've seen several times they call the minister or the NNPC, GMD to come and explain to us what is going on. Not so many people outside know actually what is going on in the oil industry. Why is it so covert? Why is it like that?
There's nothing covert about it.
Okay.
It's just that we lack the capacity to analyze the sector.
Okay.
And that is the use to which NEITI could actually put the audits that it does periodically.
Okay.
The audit can be in three phases. The fiscal audit, or the financial audit, which talks about the money flows. And the fiscal audit, which talks about how the oil flows or the gas flows from the wellhead to the export terminals. And then the process audit, which deals with how things are done in the industry, the interrelationship between the various institutions and bodies and companies. Now, what is happening is that we are not exposed to most of the information. The people in the industry themselves probably don't understand even the processes and the financial implications. Let's give an example. The NEITI's report will be based largely on the cash accounting method, whereas the oil industry, like the Shells of this world, the Chevron of this world, and even the NNPC, the MPDC, for example, would be basing their figures on accrual accounting. So when the NEITI report says 1 billion is missing, it may well be a timing and recognition issue.
In terms of, let's understand what they're expecting to make within.
Yeah, they are looking at cash accounting, how the money moves, whereas the NNPC or the oil companies, they actually be looking at the figures differently on an accrual basis. Accountants would tell you that these are two different methods, so you can't get the same figure. So there's a need to always reconcile. Then there is that middle, which is the fiscal audit, which talks about how the oil moves. So you could get losses because of spillage, you could get losses because of bunkering, you could get losses because of metering problems, you could, which could be accidental or intentional. Okay, so there are all these possibilities for losses, and over time, even in the first audit report in the early 2000s, there were reconciliation difficulties. But like I said earlier, they came down to something like $16 million. Okay, so when people are now talking about $29 billion and all that, how much did you produce? How much will the oil that you produce even amount to? So yes, over a period of time, over 3 governments, but let's not kid ourselves. There may have been some money that's been missing, but definitely not those levels. It is just not possible. But there are things that we must do. For example, the DPR must monitor royalties and all that. The FRS must work harder at taxes, the PPT, the petroleum profit tax, and all that. More importantly, the government needs to ensure that the costs of producing our oil, because when you sell oil, the money goes into 3 streams. The the royalties and taxes to NMPC, the profits to the oil company, international oil company or local oil company who's producing, and of course the costs, which is where the opaqueness that Ngozi talked about exists.
Now,
because in that box, you can put helicopter, anything.
All kinds of things.
All kinds of things.
Let's even speak to the issue of metering that you just mentioned. When you don't have metering in place, how do you even know how much, you're really producing and how much is supposed to be accruable to you?
No, you do have metering in place, but you could have metering difficulties. Anybody who works in process flows or in liquid flows and all that, or even gas flows, knows that there could be metering difficulties. Okay, and when that happens, there should be checks and balances. And the security agencies, the regulatory agencies like the DPR and representatives of the oil companies, they are all there. But you could have difficulties. And there have been cases of collusion. But, we have so much distrust for the system that even when nothing is happening, people assume things are happening. When there's been a significant drop in oil prices and therefore you are having very low receipts, people say, oh, there must be something happening. Indeed, at a point we were not even able to sell our oil.
Isn't that because somebody is not talking to Nigerians to understand clearly what is going on? I mean, you talked about capacity, the lack of capacity to even analyze the sector in the first place. The people who really should know, who should understand the problem and even profile solutions or make the ordinary man on the streets or people like us understand exactly what's going on.
Indeed, you have a relationship between the government and the oil industry, especially the oil companies, and then between the government and the citizens. Now, that link between the government and the citizens is poorly managed. The body that should be active there, the civil society, the press, those are the people that will energize that process, inform the people, and then try and, get the government to do what they should do. Now, NEITI focuses more on just the revenues. Nobody is talking about, like I said, how the money is spent. So it says, look, okay, Shell produced so much, remitted so much to the government, to the government. Chevron did the same, did a different figure, Mobil, and all that. But what did the government do with the money? Because when the money goes to the federation account, it goes into 3 or 4 streams. The federal government about 50%, the state government about 25%, the local government about 17%, the special funds 13%, the derivation and all that. Now, when that money goes to those pockets, how do they use them? Do they use it to produce, to make schools available, roads and all that, and infrastructure, health and all that, or do they simply let it disappear into bogus projects and end up in individual pockets? Well, so it's not an issue of the revenues didn't come from the oil producing companies, or there was a problem with selling. Because when you sell oil, the money in those contracts go into specialized accounts offshore. And even the NMPC can't spend that money. It's not possible. No.
All right,
until it now goes, as I have said, to the various pockets that are explained.
All right. Yeah. So when this money is, when NEITI is saying there are non-remittances amounting to so much money, who is not remitting? Let us understand that. Because you just told us now that money goes into, if NNPC cannot even spend the money.
They cannot. Now, when we talk about non-remittances, now you have to understand that, as I explained earlier, that when oil is sold and money gotten, sometimes there are delays in payment depending on the contracts. And so it could be 30 days, it could be 90 days. So before you can actually get the receipt, even though you parted with the oil. So it depends on the timing differences and all that. And there are also interest costs and issues of that nature. But the portion of the money that goes to the oil company as its own profit is clear. What goes to the government in terms of taxes and royalties is clear. What is not clear is that box for costs.
What about the oil swap issue?
Now, that is
where
a different,
we're told, a lot of money is lost from that particular
now, that
window.
is a different ball game. Now, you are not selling under the swap. You are not selling oil and getting money received into the foreign accounts in a dedicated account in the bank, say JP Morgan or wherever. What you are doing, you are sending the oil out and you're saying, look, under certain conditions, we'll get refined products back. Now, that is, again, a black box. Anything can happen in the valuations, in the receipts, and in the flows, the amounts, in terms of volumes, and what you receive back and all that. Now, that is a black box.
Wow. So in that case, anything can happen within that black box?
Definitely.
Wow.
Just like in the case of costs.
Okay, we'll come back to this. We'll go on a break now, and when we come back, certainly we'll be going out on TVC Entertainment. But viewers there can continue with the breakfast program on TVC Nigeria on Concert Channel 190 and DSTV Channel 418.
Also, go to GoTV 45 and ACTV 510. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's still TVC Breakfast. We're speaking with Alex Osunde, oil and gas expert, looking at the NEITI / EFCC probe of the oil and gas sector, and all the lack of transparency that many watchers of the industry have been complaining about. Speak to us. We're talking just when we went on that break about who exactly we're swapping with and all of the intricacies involved in that,
and who benefits.
Who benefits,
Well, who are we swapping with? The large oil trading, international oil trading companies, and even some local firms. We had many upstarts, come into this industry because they had connections in government, especially the last government. We did a lot of these swaps. As I explained, it brings a lot of opaqueness to the system and lack of transparency. Valuation problems, lack of delivery, exceptions and waivers and things like that. And that may have cost us a lot of money, a lot of products, a lot of money, and shortchanging the system. What can be done? I think the government must now focus on, a cash-based system. Sell your crude, and if you have to import the finished product, the refined product, do that.
So the oil swap is not an ideal. It's not ideal for us.
Definitely not. Except you were doing it on a government-to-government basis. I would be more comfortable with that. A counter trade on a government-to-government basis, if you were doing it with China, or you were doing it with India, or you were doing it with the US, the US probably won't do it with you. If you were doing it on a government-to-government basis, now that will be more acceptable. It will still present some valuation problems, but not serious. But with the international trading companies and their local middlemen and agents, there was a lot of opaqueness.
And on the issue of what government needs to do, the NEITI Act limitations, that is something that's been pointed at as one of the real issues here. NEITI does not have powers to prosecute. Is there a need to review that particular act?
We must situate NEITI where it should be. It's not supposed to be another EFCC. It's not supposed to be, an anti-corruption body, an investigating body or anything like that. It's supposed to present figures. It's supposed to present processes, situations for people to understand. The idea was that it would present reports, audit reports from time to time that on the three levels that I've explained, financial audit, fiscal audit, and process audit, for the users of information in the government, in the private sector, and especially the press and civil society organizations to be able to mobilize for people to hold government accountable.
Yes.
The oil companies were also supposed to present what they pay to government and what government receives. Government will also confirm that. So that's what NEITI is about. It's not, whether you look at the act or the origin of NEITI itself, you know, from the world body, the EITI, that's all it's supposed to do. So if they are now partnering with EFCC to try and prosecute or do whatever, well, that's a new angle to this. Because if they continue that, it has a way of taking or torpedoing what they are trying to achieve, because they must be seen as impartial, they must be seen as they themselves transparent and capable of informing the Nigerian public.
All right, now make us understand how these things work. The crude oil is gotten from Nigeria, from the ground, let's say, free of charge. I know there are costs involved.
It's not free of charge.
No. I'm going somewhere.
I know,
okay.
I understand.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
It's ours, so it's just from the ground,
Yes.
even though there are costs in bringing it out. But we have this naturally from our domain.
Yeah.
And we take it out to some company, as you told us earlier on, and then it is refined. At what point, when we take this thing out, do we sell it, the crude oil, and then buy refined oil, or we're supposed to sell, or we're supposed to take it there, refine, and then the company that is involved in the refining gets some kind of commission for refining and then bring back our oil?
Yes, that's what I explained earlier, that the usual method is for us to export on contract basis. You know, there are companies that are involved in this whole process, or the national oil company could actually do it directly. You sell, and the money goes into the bank offshore, and you know, from the accounting aspect, the federation account, and then you know, the CBN manages most of that, or the government's assets, and then it flows into the four major areas: derivation, the local government, the state, and the federal. You know, but what happened was that when the refineries were not functioning over the past, say, 10 years or so, because they were epileptic, they were not functioning at some stages, the government resorted to these product swaps. Clearly, somebody must have gone to them and said, we can do this. You know, this is a way to do it. But in my opinion, it was a very opaque way to run business. It was not a transparent method. It was very corruption-ridden, and it shouldn't repeat. It shouldn't happen. And so what happens is that the middlemen, the oil traders, are able to leverage on this. They take the product and then bring back refined. Now, when you take crude and you refine it, there are various aspects of the crude. But most the focus had been largely on PMS.
Yes.
And so what happens to all the other components? How do you account for it? And all that. It depends on refinery, from refinery to refinery.
And all the rest of them.
The efficiencies and all that. And then volumes. We've heard, and it is possible, that people took the crude and didn't even bring back anything.
Who really sells or should sell Nigeria's crude oil? Because there are many people who don't understand. You know, there have been instances where, you know, you get a call, oh, I hear that they sell oil in Nigeria, I'd like to buy oil and all of that. And then you have this middleman or facilitators, as they're referred to.
Who should sell the oil?
Who really sells Nigeria's oil?
It depends on who is producing the oil, because we have various contracts, production sharing contracts, and all kinds of contracts with the international oil companies and the local oil you know, companies, those involved in upstream. And so who sells it depends on who is producing.
So it's not NNPC?
NNPC, of course, is involved, because NNPC subsidiaries also, the NPDC, for example, also produces. But, you know, what happens is that the NNPC has interest in all these contracts anyway. And, you know, it's most of the joint ventures are operated, you know, by the oil companies on behalf of the NNPC. The NNPC, that behemoth, that huge body, is the one that represents the government in all these issues that we are talking about. And it's overdue for a major reform.
What kind of reforms are we talking about? Stakeholders have been saying there's a need
to
reform. Yes, to reform
it the way
it
has to be. I mean, otherwise we're going to be talking about this till the cows come home. And frankly, there needs to be a focus on what it's investing in and the other areas of production and refining and all the other
For
things.
clarity, what reforms are we looking at? What would you like to see as a player in the industry?
What would I like to see? A separation of those two issues, the investment side and the production and supervision side. And then more importantly, I would like taking out of the NNPC the conflict of interest that's evident in the supervision and regulation. The DPR should be constituted into a different body, into a very strong body that actually regulates the industry. Very important. And then we are missing out on a big issue, the gas area. Okay, and so that needs to be emphasized. You were talking about the shortfalls from the LNG and all that. We have to look at that. Clearly, it cannot be from the LNG itself. It must be after the money has been remitted and there is a problem with either recording or use or whatever it is. But definitely, it won't be from the LNG because the LNG, in my opinion, is even better managed than most of the units of the NNPC that we are talking about.
Okay, now the Executive Secretary of NEITI, Waziri Adiu, when he was talking to the Senate at the time, said that in true terms, that there is no proper record of how much crude oil Nigeria produces. So the government is not really aware to pin down how much volume in true terms. Is that really possible from the way things are, from the structure in the oil sector?
It is possible to have differences, to have reconciliation issues. And if you ever worked in any process industry or any liquid or fluid or gas flow industry, it is possible. Because from one end to the other, even when you receive products, say into tank farms, what the ship came with, what it discharges into the pipeline, and what you get in your surface tanks, there could be differences. Okay, so when he's saying that, he's not saying anything new. What he needs to emphasize at NEITI is that everyone should be accountable, should be transparent, and that the figures should be presented objectively and independently. Because the way he's going at NEITI now is counterproductive. It's unlike what NEITI started with earlier. Because once you start bunching up too closely with EFCC, the Senate, and all that, you have lost your independence. People are going to be reluctant to talk to you. Okay. They're going to be reluctant to provide figures in the oil industry, in the oil sector, in the oil companies, because reputations are at stake. Okay. Shell, Chevron, they would not want to play with their reputations.
All right, finally, a yes or no question. Is it true that the government actually favors the IOCs at the expense of local players?
Well, I mean, if you want to survive, you play with those who can make you survive. There's nothing wrong in cooperating with Shell or Mobil.
Any of those. Okay.
But you have to also encourage private enterprise locally. Okay. But you want to survive to be able to do that.
So discretion is involved in there.
Definitely.
It's all right. Thank you very much, Alex Osunde, for coming on the program today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.